Welcome to Busy Research, the podcast where business meets data and insights drive success. I'm your host, Vicki McCarthy, Director of the Center for Applied Business Research at Austin Peay State University. On this podcast, we get busy learning about how applied business research can improve business decision-making. Today on Busy Research, we have an intriguing topic for our listeners: qualitative comparative analysis and its impact on business decisions. As business owners and decision makers, you face a multitude of factors influencing business success. QCA helps businesses navigate complexity by identifying the combination of conditions that lead to desired outcomes. It's a powerful tool for understanding patterns and uncovering the unique set of circumstances that contribute to a particular business situation. QCA is a method for systematically studying complex relationships within a qualitative framework. Unlike traditional quantitative approaches, QCA focuses on understanding the interplay of various factors and conditions that lead to specific outcomes. It's particularly valuable when dealing with nuanced situations where variables interact in intricate ways. QCA provides a lens through which businesses can navigate complexity and uncover insights that might be overlooked in more traditional analyses. To shed more light on this topic, I turn to my colleague, Dr. Matt Farrell, an associate professor of management at Austin Peay State University and a seasoned expert. Thank you for joining us today, Matt.
Thank you, Vicki. It's a pleasure to be here.
For our listeners who are not familiar with qualitative comparative analysis, or QCA, can you give us a brief overview?
Absolutely. QCA is a little different from other qualitative methods, which would be things like interviews or case studies, or other things that kind of deal with non-numerical phenomena, in that it allows the researcher to compare cases in a quantitative way. In so doing, it allows us to get at the combinations of factors that might be either sufficient or necessary to reach a given outcome. A simple example might be crime prevention. If we performed QCA on an area to determine the best way to prevent break-ins, it could tell us whether it's enough to leave the lights on at night, or if we need to have an alarm system, a full-time security guard, or even go nuts and have an elaborate series of booby traps like an ancient tomb. QCA can reveal what combinations of those factors would prevent break-ins most of the time. It could also be the case that there are multiple ways to prevent break-ins. So, for example, it's what we call equifinality in QCA. And going back to my hypothetical about crime, it might be that the fewest break-ins occurred either at stores which left the lights on and had an alarm system, or at stores which had a security guard and left the lights on but no alarm system. So QCA is great for determining how causal factors work together in that way. So if business owners in our hypothetical area use this, it would benefit them by having, they avoid spending money on light security and an alarm system when really one of these combinations is enough to prevent the break-in.
That is a very helpful example. Can you talk a little bit more about the advantages of using QCA?
So one major advantage of QCA is that it's set theoretical, and it's not a statistical technique like you would usually use with numerical analyses in business research. So in layman's terms, what that would mean is that you don't need a ton of data points to perform the analysis. It's what they call a small n technique, right? So if your business comes from only 5 customers, or the bulk of your business comes from only 5 customers, you could use QCA to compare their characteristics, where you'd be out of luck if you wanted to run a regression analysis or most other statistical techniques with so few observations. It was initially invented by sociologists to study different countries and other phenomena where there are fairly few, relevant events like revolutions. So it's great for that kind of thing. Another plus of QCA is causal asymmetry. And what that means, again, in lay people's terms, is that you can identify consistent pathways to avoiding an outcome of interest as well as achieving it. In other words, if you run a regression analysis, the analysis is symmetrical in the sense that, if hard work is positively associated with gold medal winners in the Olympics, then it should be negatively associated with those that didn't win gold medals, right? But QCA is a little more reflective of reality in this case, in that, if you compare gold medalists to those who didn't win a gold medal, you'll find that the winners and the losers both worked really hard, right? If you're in the Olympics and competing there, and presumably you're pretty dedicated to your athletics, so we would know that that's kind of not sufficient on its own hard work, even though it's present in Olympic gold medal winners, right? I could probably practice every day for a year and I still wouldn't be good enough for the Olympics. I'm 37 years old and really uncoordinated. So that's one plus of QCA as well.
For business decision makers who may be more familiar with other statistical processes or techniques, can you discuss how they compare to using QCA?
I think in some cases it is, yeah. There are advantages, equifinality, the idea that there are multiple paths to reaching a desired outcome. So if you want to achieve high sales, for example, you might try an ad campaign or you might try lowering prices. It might not be necessary to do both. And so we can use QCA to tease out those sorts of effects. It's also great for what we call conjunctural causality, right? The idea of how these factors sort of play together, right? In a regression analysis, we kind of view all these observations as independent, but QCA accounts for how causal factors might work together, right? And a simple example of how this might work would be driving a car, right? If you hit the gas, you go. If you hit the brake, you stop. But it's not necessarily the case that you'll kind of be at a medium rate of speed if you press both the gas and the brake, right? They might work together such that your tires are squealing and you're not really going anywhere, right? So QCA is great for that kind of conjunctural causality in your analyses as well.
What recommendations do you have for business owners and business decision makers who want to use QCA?
Absolutely, yeah. So QCA would probably be best for people who are looking to figure out how these combinations of factors consistently lead to an outcome, right? The film Anchorman has a joke where the guy has a cologne and he says 60% of the time it's a hit with the ladies every time. And in QCA we hold it to a bit higher of a threshold, about 80% typically, but you can play with that. And figure out what will usually cause a good outcome. And as far as what a good outcome is, the sky is really the limit, right? Business research, we usually focus on, return on assets, return on, investment, other measures of profitability. But you can use it for other things. It's been used in international business research to look at internationalization factors. It's been used in entrepreneurship research for all sorts of things, entrepreneurial orientation of individuals and all that. In a study I published last year, my team and I were looking at how to avoid lawsuits if you're a platform firm, right? It's the contracting gets very complicated when you have so many suppliers. And so we looked at how to avoid lawsuits. So really, as far as what the outcome is that you want to look at, there are a lot of possibilities.
Could you provide additional information on the data types and sample sizes required for QCA studies when making business decisions?
There was one study from the north of the UK where the researchers were looking at people who were out of work due to long-term health issues. They had an intervention tactic that was supposed to bring people back into the labor force. And so they looked at how different combinations of age, sex, health problems, and so on, where the intervention was more effective. And that allowed the government to better target the intervention to those people where it's most effective. As far as business owners leveraging QCA, I would recommend you bring along an expert who's been doing it for a while. But QCA is a very powerful technique, but it's easy to misapply. Right. I've seen even in a prestigious outlet, you had a study where there's a plethora of causal conditions combined with very poor coverage values and a low frequency threshold. And so to kind of disentangle that from fancy academic language, what that means is that you can sell 70 million records, but only if your name is Michael Jackson and you release an album called Thriller in 1980, right? A lot of times, if you have too many causal conditions, it gets very, very specific in that sense, and that it's not really easy to more broadly apply. QCA is originally a small n technique. It can be applied with a lot of observations if you so desire. The issue is, of course, with any small data set is that you you don't really sort of know certain things for a fact, right? The ultimate example is life on Earth, right? We don't know what an alien might look like because we've never seen one, unless you've been abducted or something, but we won't get into that here. Another example might be hats, right? If the first hat you see is a top hat that's black and has a brim, then you may assume all hats are black and have brims and are very tall. And then you see a beanie and it's just mind blowing, right? So with any kind of small number of observations, there's always that risk that you'll find something that just totally disconfirms everything you thought. In terms of large and QCA analyses, it can be the case that things get buried if you set too high of a consistency threshold, right? Or if what they call your coverage values are too low. So in other words, if you find within a set of 4,000 observations that something works twice, is that really something that's going to consistently work every time, or did we just get lucky those two particular times, right? So you want to not only have, a large data set in that case, but a large set of observations that consistently lead to what you're looking for. That's kind of the best way to sort of triangulate the best paths that might be applicable for your business.
Thank you again, Matt, for joining us today. This has been a very enlightening conversation about qualitative comparative analysis and how business owners can leverage these statistical processes to make better business decisions.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Vicki. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Busy Research. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you in the next episode of Busy Research. Until then, stay curious and busy.